So Dr. Svyatoslav Milovanov graduated in pediatrics from Saratov Medical University. In 2003, he received his PhD degree, and in 2008, graduated in physics science. He started career in clinical trial industry from 2007, and as of now, he's providing services for CRO patients recruitment, site management, medical and scientific support. His interests are prognosis of patients recruitment and development approaches to predicting of recruitment. He is the author of more than 50 publications. So welcome and go, thank you.
Thank you for introduction me. I'm trying to share my screen and I see that, do you see my screen? Or not?
Not the letters, but yes, the slide, yes, but there are no letters.
How to share my, because so from my point of view, I see that I launched the demonstration, but and you said that you do not see anything. And right now you see something? Do you see something?
No, yes, no, yes.
Okay, good. So let me introduce, as I said, we already late a little, and that's why I will as fast as I can. So my presentation title, like role of nurses and challenges, of course, not of one nurse, but of course nurses and the challenges of clinical trials. And this is recruitment and contemporary tendencies, as you already heard about me so a little bit. So, and what is clinical trial? Clinical trial as of today is a way to provide the society with effective and safe approaches applied to the patients. I put here the term approaches because it's not only the treatment, but also approaches could be like diagnostic, rehabilitation, and others. Then, as of now, over 34,000 clinical trials is conducted annually in the whole of the world. I think it's much more, and data of clinicaltrial.gov for last year consists of 34,528 studies, including all phases. And the number of patients participating in clinical trials annually is dozens of millions. But anyway, this is not more than 2 or 5% of patients which could be participating. And cost to reach the approval is so high that it could seem that the more cost done, the more success is expected. But for example, to reach the success in the clinical trial, it could be spent more than 10 years and more than $2 billion US dollars. And what at the end? And at the end, we have only 1% brings approaches to the patients or reach the market, or by simple words, having overcome all approvals and studies in order to be safe and effective to give favor to the patients. And what is the reasons of such result? This is due to challenges rising during the development of the investigational medicinal product. And further, I will use a term which are mandatory to use in clinical trials because it's very regulated industry, and all the terms are developed and could be in one only manner. Maybe it's not related with the tendencies. So you will understand in further. Then, and clinical trial traditionally is conducting in hospitals or medical centers and being called centralized trials. Please keep in mind this term. And so because in further I will return to this term much time. Then challenges during the clinical trials. I divided it for two groups, two big groups. It is related with study itself, like protocol, like site, like recruitment, and non-related with site. This is like pandemic, like political reasons, others, and related with study. This is, of course, the main aims of any clinical trials, like efficacy and safety. And this is indeed challenge, because to prove that the new investigational medicinal product is safe and effective is really a challenge. The next challenge is fundraising. Definitely, that when study started, the company who ran the study sometime could not find the resources to finish the study, and this is a challenge. Then next two challenges is recruitment and retention, and pertains to the patients, and this is challenge, and in the next few slides I will show why it is so. Then motivation is a key driver to and pertains to the site's team, and motivations has to have a leader, and of course it must be a principal investigator. And also many other challenges like regulatory, like eligibility criteria, like education of site staff, and this conference is fully devoted to this challenge. Diversity, this is a new emerging challenges, but we will not touch in this short presentation. Then, the most important challenge is the recruitment of patients and retention the patients in the study. And why it is so important? Because the studies which is failed in recruitment of patients is reaching up to 80%. And the figures which I presented earlier, you can see that by the other words, from 100 study, the steps on the recruitment is dropping off 80 studies. And then additionally, 85% of trials fail to retain a patients, and also dropout, this is also added, rate could reach up to 30%. So, and back to the title, a role of nurse in clinical trials is definitely unreplaceable and related with the patients, and now substantially raised in the last decades. Nurses are mostly assigned with many tasks related with the patients, but most established task is a study coordinator, and authors, as in more in general general topic of our conferences, not nurse which are participating in clinical trials, not just in nurse, but preferably highly educated nurses, and this is mentioning many authors. Role of nurses in recruitment and retention of patients is also is of course in the visits of the patients, and consists of 4 main steps. First step is before the patient visit. Second, during the patient's visit. Third step is after the patient's visit, and fourth step is between the patient visit. So before the visit of patients, nurse must prepare the logs related with investigational medicinal product and non-investigational medicinal product, to prepare the visit procedure items like laboratory kits, syringes, wipes, to remind and to invite the patients. It's also important things which must do by the nurses, to provide the logistics of transfer, if any, during the patient's visit, to follow through whole procedure, to intercommunicate with the patient in order to retain them in the study, and this is very important things, to take and indicate the vital signs. After the patient's visit, follow up the patient's final vital signs, to provide the logistic of transfer, if any, and between the patient visit, to track the window of the visits, to continue the communication with the patients. Then back to challenges which are non-related with the study. This is of course a pandemic, and without any argues, there is no question that the COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on the trials. More than 1,200 trials were disrupted by COVID in June 2020 alone. Then disasters like earthquake, political reasons like conflicts. The challenges in clinical trials partly cause the tendencies of clinical trials. Not all tendencies has a firm determination and discretion, because this is new emerging tendencies, and that's why they not yet firm description. But anyway, I will shortly list here. First, this decentralization of the studies, implementing of the patient-centric studies, virtualization of the studies, risk management approach in conducting of clinical trial, implementation of artificial intellect to the study, back to the presenter before my presentation, RWD, LWE approaches, hybridization of the studies, others. Then shortly description. Decentralized studies, it is the studies, as I mentioned before, that traditional study or centralized studies conducting in clinical trials or in sites, in centers. And decentralized studies, of course, logically studies which are conducting fully or partly out of the clinical site. And usually the clinical and the nurse, the role of nurse in the decentralized studies is just doing her task out of clinical sites. And authors even saying that centralized studies is dead. Patient-centric studies is partly similar to the decentralized studies, but it is some definition is like investigations that are prioritize the needs of the patients at all stages, including design, activation, enrollment, data collection, completion, and outcome report. Or by other words, patient-centric studies is a study where the patient is determining the design of protocol in order to make it more comfortable to them. Nurse role in these studies also is accompanying the patient with virtual studies. Some authors saying about that all the studies which are non-decentralized is all virtual, but of course it's not so. And purely this means that studies is doing virtual. For example, some sponsor before the run of real studies or actual studies doing the part of aspects virtual. Of course, role of nurse in this study is also virtual. Risk management approach in conducting of clinical trial. It is an approach which are more spread now and allow the protocol be very flexible and react to the raised risk in timely manner. Nurse role is to timely report and reveal the risks like deviated of patient windows time, to predict the possible dropout of patient, and many others. So it means that highly educated nurses is substantially or highly requested in this study. Implementation of artificial intellect to the study. The evolution of very simple words. The evolution of precise technology to nanotechnology is resulted to implementation of this approach like artificial intellect, because artificial intellect as of now can track the very small and harder revealed items related with the safety, for example. And not only artificial intellect, not only the tendency, but also a challenge. And the role of nurse in the studies is the same like for centralized studies. And this is real world data, real world evidence approaches. This is more and more emerging tendencies, and this is something which are between of the or combining of the patient-centric decentralized studies and allow the patient and the investigator doing their job and simultaneously participating in the study. And nurse in the study is also doing their job in ordinary manner. Hybridization of the studies. It means that all of the mixture of all of the previously described and mentioned studies. And what is a model of the function in clinical trials with the nurse involvement? If it is a traditional studies or conventional or centralized, mostly this is a site management model with the task of nurse as a study coordinator. If it is decentralized studies, like mostly like patient-centric, but patient-centric also could be centralized studies. Anyway, there is a two model, mobile research nursing and home care nurse. Anyway, this is out of site nursing. And at the end, Clinical trial is a cutting edge of science to bring the so needed medicines to the suffering patients of the whole world. And cutting edge always the challenge. And modern challenges now substantially increase and consist of digitalization, decentralization, personalization, and many others new tendencies. And in the meantime, the old challenges like recruitment of patients keep safe. The SAF requires nursing all the time, so the nurses' involvement in clinical trials is obvious. But the old and new tendencies form the role of nurses in clinical trial differently. Thank you. This is my contacts. If you have a question, and you can also use my website. So I'm mostly developing of predicting of clinical trial enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Milovanov, for your excellent speech. Thank you also for adjusting to time. Do any of the speakers have any questions? So I have one question for you. How many studies can full-time go on to nurse coordinator? How many studies could one nurse?
Mostly, of course, the principal investigator and inside team prefer to have more than one nurse, of course. And if there is one nurse, it means that it's not so large studies, and with, of course, with enrollment, not so much patients. So one nurse and one team. So if nurse, it depends on the education of the nurse, and simultaneously nurse can participate in other studies, of course, not limiting the regulators, but I think not more than 3-4 clinical trials. It depends again on the phases, on the many factors.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Okay.